Twin Mask is a fantasy LARP that I play at here in Southern California, in which we, the players, create characters who have died at some point in the past and return to life in this fantasy world in the city of Port Frey, essentially the Mos Eisley of our fantasy world, and have to contend with all of the challenges that come with that. And right now, at the August game that we just played, Port Frey is under siege. For those of you who haven't been following my videos, hi, I'm Jeremy. I started playing a Twin Mask back in November of last year, and I've been making videos recapping my experiences at LARP. Some of them are more about what I think of the experience and sharing that part of it. This video is going to be much more about the narrative of what happened this August and sharing a bit of that with you as a lens into the actual story of the LARP. This last game that just happened was actually one of my favorites so far, if not my favorite outright. Our little city has become a really important political center for the world because we have player characters from all these different parts of the world with varying degrees of power, and there's a lot of magical mayhem and mischief that goes on in Port Frey, so it becomes a really contested center of attention. And because of some actions that players have taken in past games and other events that have also just occurred in the world, one particular nation called the Nadine, who are essentially the Roman Empire, if they, first of all, were necromancers and also worshipped their empress in a sort of god cult known as the Blood Cauldron. So, dark, dastardly necromancers attacking most of the world and also the town that we happen to be in. And that's what we had to deal with this game. Because of that siege, the entire game, there were ballista bolts, fire pots, and rocks propelled by catapults that were essentially being flung into town that just while walking around you could be hit with, and all of this was being managed by various advocates and staff members who are essentially game masters, and they were going around town and simulating the experience for players of ballista bolts coming in, often actually tossing large ballista bolts from their hands or small foam rocks, and the ballista bolts were foam too, and if one hit you, you were pretty much dead. There were very few character effects you could use to resist them. So hopefully you were either brought back afterward and sewed back together if the ballista bolt cuts you in half or something. But yeah, that was kind of the baseline starting threat level of this game, which was intended to be a really difficult one. There was also a whole mini game built around resisting the siege, in which players, regardless of whether you were combat focused, economic focused, a healer, or just about any specialty within the realm of possibility in the game, everyone could affect the siege in different ways. It had some drawbacks in that it was maybe a little difficult for players to figure out exactly how the actions they were taking were actually affecting the battle or having ramifications on the world. But it gave a really clear goal and resulted in a combination of a lot of tension due to the threats coming in, and also a lot of collaboration due to the really big need to try and resist this siege and not be completely overwhelmed. So that's kind of the core of what was happening at game, what was happening going into the game. Out of character, there were some other factors at play for me, and at play for the rest of the player base, really. First of all was just the heat. It was really, really hot this game. It was really hot the game before, and that actually hurt my enjoyment of the game last time. This time, I got some Pedialyte, and it totally changed my experience, and I was feeling pretty good pretty much the entirety of the game until I kind of pushed myself a little bit too hard. But I knew what I was doing there. I felt much better about my overall experience in the heat, because right now it's pretty late at night and I'm still sweating. Being out there in Corona, which is where the game takes place, in the middle of the day when it was over 90 degrees, trying to do combat or trying to run around was way too much. And so dealing better with the heat was something I was very grateful for this past game. I also typically stay in an in-character campsite. However, the person who I camp with, who owns all of that material, couldn't come to game this time. But fortunately, rather than car camping, which would have been really uncomfortable when it was that hot, I actually got to stay in one of the buildings at the site. The site that we play in is a permanent Renaissance fairground, so there are actual physical buildings there. It made my setup and tear down that much simpler. It was really central to the game, like my in-character camp was, and I'm really glad that it all worked out and that I ended up finding a solution so close to when the game would be. So let's talk about the two characters that I play at Twin Mask and what they kind of got up to this past game. So I do play two characters at the game. You could call one my main and one my alt, but I try to divide my time pretty equally between the two. The thing that's important is that the game goes from Friday night until essentially Sunday morning. And so I split up my game based off those times. On Friday night and Saturday night, I play my character Octile, who's essentially a barbarian shaman, kind of a witch doctor-y, dark and more sinister type who is better suited to being played at night, both for his personality and because he has demon blood in his veins, and so I wear a lot of fur and hooves to represent that aspect to him. My other character, Caliban, was the first character that I played at Twin Mask. He is a pirate merchant. He also has a big heavy coat, but when I play him during the day and it's so warm out, I tend not to wear that. I play him Saturday morning all the way until the nighttime, when I then have my NPC shift, which I'll talk about later. And after my NPC shift, I transition back to Octile for the remainder of my play Saturday night, though I have in the past sometimes instead just played Caliban Saturday night. So let's talk about Octile first. My barbarian shaman has a really intense backstory and is a really intense character, and one of the things that was part of the inception of the character from the start was a specific sword that he returned with when he arrived here in Port Frey after his death. And I had actually commissioned that sword to be custom crafted for me to use at the game, and I finally got it this past game. So I started playing back in April, but only got it now. However, I'm really glad to have it, and here it is. You can kind of see it. Let's see how much back I can go. Woo! And if I can show you some of the detail on it. So it's meant to be a barbarian style sword with bone, pommel, and guard, essentially, with a leather, hilt. And he is from the lion tribe, so I have this awesome lion accent here on the sword. And the actual blade, which was meant to look essentially like Damascus steel along the way, and I really like how it turned out. The curve is not ideal for sheathing in any sort of frog or sheath, so I may need to get one built specifically for this that will fit around. However, I'm really happy with it. I got to use it, and I don't mind walking around with my sword out while playing the character because he's a bit more savage. He's a barbarian. It's totally fine with me to have the sword out. And that was a really nice highlight for the game, is to finally have this really important character prop for this character. Now, this was my third game playing Octile, and as such, I started really coming into the character. I feel like it takes 3 games to really get settled into the world and to meet people in character and start to create bonds and relationships and have people know who you are or remember you and be able to engage in some deeper roleplay. That's not a requirement, obviously. It's just kind of what I've noticed for myself. My character Octile is a summoner, which means he summons and calls on a variety of spirits and calls them into his body, where he manifests not only their powers, but some of their quirks. Finally, this game, I got my first summoning spell, allowing me to call a spirit, specifically a bee spirit, which sounds meek, but is actually super dangerous in Port Frey because these are fantasy bees that can hurt quite a lot if you're not prepared for them. Additionally, I got to finally touch on some of the experiences I really wanted to have as that character. I got to learn a lot about demons in the world and in character, and continue to explore just how big the world is, narratively and lore-wise, which was really exciting because my character has demon blood. It's something he's really interested in, and he's forgotten most of his memories from before he died, or at least a significant portion of them, which gives me the kind of narrative leeway to, justify that I don't know as a character, and is something that most players, especially newer players, are encouraged to do, is take what are considered memory flaws, which allow you to play off the fact that you as a player don't know a lot about the game, and so therefore it's hard for your character to come off as if they do know a lot. I also had 2 really fun encounters that I got to be a part of. One was a fight against a Nadine Legionnaire. Legionnaires are kind of the core and elite troops of the Nadine Empire. While we were fighting them, we finally downed one and realized that it was extremely diseased and carried a lot of sicknesses and illnesses on it, and that became especially clear when the Legionnaire essentially detonated on impact, covering us and soiling us with his blood, narratively, obviously, infecting us with leprosy. Us being me and some of the other players who happened to be around the Legionnaire at the time. I wasn't even that involved in the whole battle, but I rushed in near the end of it, and unfortunately got caught up in this. I think that'll be an interesting thing to play. So now my shaman is a leper. That is gonna be interesting to see what comes of that. Yeah. Later that night, I got to witness and be around while there was a nightmare serpent rampaging around town. And a whole bunch of Returned got together and tried to essentially calm it and worked on teaching this nightmare serpent the meaning of love. Yeah. So that happened, and that was fascinating to watch. I don't want to give too much details to avoid spoiling anything that other players don't want to share super publicly. But that was really, really cool to see and made me really excited about the game and this character's storyline. And I'm excited to see where it continues to go in the future. Next, as my pirate merchant Caliban, I was actually far more involved in the actual siege and in being invested in the city because my character has a vested interest in the city. He has been trying to become a harbor master. He's a very nautical type character, so he wants to keep the harbor safe. He wants to make sure the ships are well tended to, that the seaward side is very well protected. And so that's what I've been working on, and as a result, it gave me a lot to do and run around doing during the game. At first, what I really started out doing was working really hard to gather resources to complete a ship I'd been working on building so that my ship could be used to evacuate more citizens from the city. That went well enough. I managed to gather the resources necessary to finish the ship, but when I actually finished building my ship, I kind of got roped in and conscripted into this really cool, really dangerous opportunity to take on a special mission against the sieging Nadine because of the fact that I had a ship. I had really just finished building my ship. I named it The New Dawn, which I thought was a cool name. I had crewed it with NPCs, which took a lot of resources to put together in addition to the resources I spent on the ship. And we went on the mission, and my ship got sunk immediately. And so essentially all of the effort and resources I had gathered over the last 7 games were immediately trashed by this mission, which really sucked, and I'm still a little sore about it, but I hope it leads to some interesting places narratively. It also allowed me and a whole bunch of other players to have a really cool experience on this mission, which I'm really glad for, and I'm grateful there was even this opportunity for people who happen to have a ship. Or were more nautical type players. I think it's really cool. It's just hard not to be sour to lose the ship literally the same day I built it, with all the crew and everything gone too. So that was rough. That's the kind of long story short of it. Hopefully I'll be able to build back up a lot more quickly now that I understand the game better and I've got more resources, but that was definitely tough to go through. My character also in this process got a really fast and hard refresher course in naval strategy and now has the relevant lore skill for it, which just represents that my character understands naval military strategy. And so whenever that comes up again in the future, hopefully I will fare a little bit better. I'm kind of justifying it, well, not kind of, I am justifying it as my character continuing to recover memories from his past life when he did understand naval strategy very well. And clearly I am not living up to that part of my character. At least I did not live up to it in this past game. I also got to have a really cool character moment for Caliban. One of the things he's been working on doing is making connections with a lot of the other potential trading partners in the world, other nations and other trading guilds. The biggest one of all is the International Merchants Guild. And I finally met one of the representatives from the International Merchants Guild who was rather high up there, who is played by a staff member. What I really appreciated was that this staff member knows a lot about my character and the work that I've been doing because I've been coordinating with them to figure out a lot of the economic stuff that my character has been up to and making sure I'm doing things correctly as per all the rules of the game. And during my time role-playing with this representative of the International Merchants Guild, they essentially looped my backstory into it, the backstory I'd written for Caliban, who died a very, very long time ago. And essentially, he was kind of a notorious character. He was overshadowed by a lot of the other more notorious and more legendary characters in that era, but he had a pretty notorious reputation. And that was introduced as a potential obstacle in my path, which I thought was really cool because it's narrative and it's based off stuff that I wrote and came up with for the character. And it made me really happy because it felt like my character was a real part of the world as opposed to me just injecting myself into the world. It felt like other parties now knew about me in a way that was organic and natural and that could complicate things for me in the future. And so that's really actually pretty exciting. Regardless of it being like an impediment to my goals, the point of the game, more so than reaching my goals, is to weave a really cool story. And so that really fulfills that for me, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where that continues to go moving forward. Pretty briefly, I mean, that was kind of the extent of my involvement in the game as my characters. There was a lot more that happened. There were special missions that a lot of players went on to relay messages from our armies, or protect our storehouses, or raid enemy outposts and projects. There was just a real ton going on where it felt like everyone who wanted to be at least had some way of being involved beyond the actual combat that occurred in and around town. As far as I understand, I think the siege is still ongoing, so come next September, the attack is gonna continue happening in some form, if it's maybe an uneasy détente sort of state. And I'm really excited. I'm really happy with how the game is progressing, and I had a lot of fun. I just need to swallow the pill about the ship, get back on track with all of that, and I think I'm just gonna continue to enjoy the game more and more as I understand not only how to play the game better, but how to play it in a way that's most enjoyable for me, like I talked about a lot in my last video, by focusing on the narrative and the roleplay I'm having in creating a game, more so than accomplishing specific goals. I did have a cool NPC shift too, which I do want to mention. There's this really powerful magical tome that is widely beloved by a lot of the player base, and I got to play someone trying to steal this tome, and so we went into the Guild of Academics, which is essentially the central research magical institution of the town, and kind of conned them with a fake cover story and gained their trust and lowered their suspicion. And then we bolted. One of the people I was with grabbed the book and we bolted the hell out of there, and then she passed it off to me and I bolted the rest of the way, trying my best to get out of town. And we got super far, but between the heat and the fact that there was kind of a medical call which made me stop during the game, so I didn't have a chance to just keep running. I had to slow down from full speed and then pick back up again. Gave them a chance to catch up to me. The heat made my legs give out. I ended up tripping, and I actually kind of scraped my knee pretty badly, where it's still healing now, about a week after. And I didn't get away with the book, but I got a lot farther than I think any of us expected, and I was really, really happy about that, and it was fun to do that. I think NPCing is such a cool part of the game where you get to do something completely different, and it serves for me as a really good break on Saturday night, where afterwards I can decide to either sleep, I can keep NPCing if I'm having a really good time, or go back to one of my two characters depending on how I'm feeling and what I want to explore. And that was it really. I was up pretty late both nights, but I made sure to get a little bit more sleep. I made sure to be a bit more hydrated and a bit better fed throughout the game, both things which I think I can continue to improve on next game, where it's probably still going to be pretty hot. And Sunday I woke up and I didn't have much to tear down because I just had to pack my stuff up from the room I was in instead of tearing down a whole camp, which made everything a lot easier. And I went home and I was super exhausted, really, really exhausted. I took a 3-hour nap and woke up still just as exhausted and had to work all night until about 3 a.m., which was really rough. But I did it, and now I'm more or less back on track with work and taking a little bit of break from thinking about all this game stuff besides making this video, so I can get some productive things done and be ready for next month when our September game will occur and the story, as always, will continue. So there you have it. That's my experience at Twin Mask for this August. I hope you enjoy hearing about the game, and if you can make it, I hope you do give it a try. It's a lot of fun. It can be super intense, especially with the heat, but it's something I think everyone should try at least once, and it's a really fun hobby that I am really glad to have. In general, I make videos about all things imaginary, topics that are nerdy, narrative, or otherwise interesting to me. If you want to continue to see more of my videos about LARP, D&D, or any other nerdy topic, go ahead and subscribe and check it out. I would love to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so I'm really gonna push for that. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Whew, it's so hot.